My girlfriend broke up with me just to test me, because her friends told her to. When she wanted to come back, I refused. I thought I had seen it all, until my girlfriend decided to turn our breakup into content for TikTok. My name is Donovan. I'm 27 years old and I want to share something I've been carrying for weeks. I don't know if I'm overreacting, if I'm being too sensitive, or if this really is a sign that something isn't right in my relationship. My girlfriend's name is Stefania. She's 25 years old. And lately she's been doing something that's left me completely emotionally exhausted. She insists on testing me. I'm confused, irritated, and worried. That's why I decided to write here. I need sincere and impartial opinions, because I feel like I can no longer see the situation clearly. I'll explain everything from the beginning to give context. Stefania and I have been together for 2 years. Our relationship has always been quite stable. Not perfect, of course, because no relationship is. But we've never had serious problems. We communicated well, supported each other, and there was trust. Or at least that's what I believed. Everything started to change a few months ago. Although at first I thought it was something temporary, now I'm sure it's a pattern I can't ignore. The first incident happened on an ordinary afternoon. I had just gotten home from work, tired, thinking about having dinner and watching a series. Stefania was at my apartment waiting for me. When I entered, I noticed she had a strange expression, as if she was bothered or upset. I approached to kiss her, but she turned her face away. I stood still and asked if something had happened. She responded with a direct question, "Who is Valeria?" I was confused. I know Valeria from work, but I barely talked to her. I thought maybe she was talking about someone else. I explained that Valeria was a colleague from the administrative area, someone I almost never talked to. Then she said she saw a notification on my phone when she entered the room, a message that said, "Thanks for helping me." I was surprised because I clearly remembered that message wasn't from Valeria, but from a team colleague whose document issue I had resolved. I showed it to her, showed the entire conversation. There was nothing suspicious. She checked, saw it was true, and laughed, as if it had all been an unimportant misunderstanding. But what really bothered me was what she said next. "I just wanted to see if you got nervous." At the time I thought it was a bad joke, but I didn't give it much importance. Sometimes people say things without thinking. I let it go. Believe me, I wish I had taken it more seriously that day, because what came after were similar situations, each more absurd than the last. The second time happened almost 2 weeks later. We were at a cafe we always go to. Stefania was fiddling with her phone and suddenly put the device down on the table, crossed her arms, and stared at me as if I had done something terrible. I asked if everything was okay, and she replied that she had seen me like a girl's photo on social media. I asked which photo she was talking about, and she showed me a screenshot that her friend, Kimberly, had sent. In the image, my account appeared with a like on a photo of a girl I don't even know. I reviewed my history, reviewed my activity, and there was nothing. I explained that it must be an error or a mix-up. Stefania stayed serious for a few seconds, and then said, "It was a test." This time I really got irritated. I said I didn't think it was fair or healthy to invent or manipulate situations just to see how I would react. I thought it was childish and draining. But she responded in a light tone, almost mocking. "Relax. My friends say this is normal. That's how you find out what your boyfriend is really like." I was shocked. I couldn't believe she justified it as if it were an innocent game. It wasn't a game for me. I couldn't see it as something funny. She was making me feel watched, judged, and constantly tested for no reason. That's when something clicked in my head. Stefania's friends, Kimberly and Julia, I have known them since we started dating, and I've never liked them. Not out of hate, nor to insult them, but simply because they don't share the same values I have about relationships. They're the type of people who live in search of excitement, even if it means lying, manipulating, or playing with their partner's feelings. Both Kimberly and Julia have had numerous problems with their boyfriends, and most of the time, they themselves were the cause, whether through infidelity, lies, or impulsive behaviors. To give you an idea, Kimberly cheated on her boyfriend at least 3 times, that I know of. I know this because Stefania herself told me. Even so, the guy stays with her, putting up with everything. They call him a doormat, a term they use to refer to a man who tolerates anything to not lose his girlfriend. Julia is the same. She has a boyfriend who treats her with affection, who's always attentive to her, but she manipulates him constantly. She blocks the guy when she gets tired of him, unblocks him when she wants attention. She invents stories about men who supposedly approach her just to see if he gets jealous. And if the boyfriend gets irritated, she accuses him of being controlling or insecure. I've always felt that they influence Stefania negatively. I know we're all responsible for our own decisions, but I also know that the environment around us influences in. Every time these things happen, when she acts in ways I didn't recognize before, I immediately think it comes from the conversations she has with Kimberly and Julia. Recently, I talked directly to Stefania about all this. It wasn't an argument, but a serious conversation in which I tried to explain how this whole situation made me feel. I said I didn't think these tests were healthy, that it was a form of emotional manipulation, even if she didn't intend to hurt me. I explained that it made me feel like I was always being evaluated, as if any reaction of mine was a test I could fail. She listened in silence, without interrupting. When I finished, she sighed and said she understood my point, but that I shouldn't exaggerate. She assured me she didn't do it to irritate me, but to strengthen the relationship. She said literally, "I just want to know that I can trust you." And my friends say that sometimes it's necessary to see how a person reacts to certain things to really know them. I didn't know what to respond. I stayed silent for a few seconds, trying to process what she had just said. For me, trust is built with communication, with time, with real actions, not with traps or mind games, not by putting your partner in false situations to see how they react. For me, that's the opposite of trust. It's a sign of deep insecurity. I said calmly, "But I've never given you a reason to doubt me." And she replied, "I know, but I don't want to be naive. You never know." At that moment, I felt a knot in my stomach. Not because she was accusing me directly of something, but because I realized I was stuck in a cycle where I could never win. If I reacted well to the tests, she would continue because it works. If I reacted badly, she would take it as a warning. If I got irritated, she would say I was exaggerating. If I stayed quiet, she would assume I didn't care. No matter what I did, there would always be a reason for another test. Since then, I've been restless. I don't deny that I love her. Stefania is an incredible person when she's not being influenced by these ideas. She's affectionate, kind, generous, and has a sense of humor that has always enchanted me. But what she's doing is affecting my mental peace. It makes me feel constantly observed, as if I were trapped in a relationship where I have to prove something that should already be more than proven. And the worst is that I feel if I don't stop this now, it will become something even worse over time. I don't know how to explain to Stefania that these tests not only bother me, but hurt the relationship. I don't know how to make her understand that the things her friends say aren't healthy. I don't want to seem like the type of boyfriend who forbids friendships, because it's not about that. She's free to have the friends she wants, but I also think she needs to recognize when advice is bad. Kimberly and Julia aren't examples of healthy relationships, and yet they're influencing ours. That's why I'm writing here. I want advice on how to talk to her effectively, how to make her see that these tests are harmful, how to explain that trust isn't built this way. I don't want to fight. I don't want this to turn into a bigger conflict. I just want her to understand. Update 1. I didn't imagine I'd be writing an update so soon, but what happened recently was so intense and so out of place that I feel the need to detail everything. Many told me that what I was experiencing with Stefania wasn't healthy, that her behavior wouldn't improve as long as I kept tolerating it. And although it was hard to accept, now I understand they were right. What happened a few days ago was the last straw. It was the moment I exploded because I felt I had reached the limit of my patience. It all started when Stefania sent me a message in the afternoon, saying we needed to talk. It wasn't the first time she said something like that, but this time the tone was different. The message said, "It's important. See you at the park at 7? There was no context, no explanation, just that phrase. I was coming from a heavy day at work, full of meetings, accumulated tasks, and problems to solve. Still, I decided to go because I thought maybe she finally wanted to talk seriously about what had been happening. I arrived at the park a few minutes early. I walked a bit to calm down and sat on a bench near the fountain. I was physically and mentally tired. When I saw her approaching, the first thing I noticed was that she had a tense face, dramatizing a cry without tears. It was that kind of cry, more acted than real. Like when someone tries to show pain but without really feeling it. Her shoulders trembled exaggeratedly, but her eyes were completely dry. She stopped in front of me without greeting and said the first thing, "You're a bastard. I found out everything. I don't want to see you ever again. I thought you were different, but you slept with that one." I was completely disconcerted. I felt a mix of disbelief and irritation. I looked at her without getting up, took a deep breath, and said with the little patience I had left, "I didn't sleep with anyone. What are you talking about now?" She took a step back, as if my words had offended her even more. She covered her face with her hands, still without tears, and repeated, "I hate you. I don't want to know anything about you. We're done." I didn't have the energy for another absurd scene. I didn't have the strength to dismantle yet another unfounded accusation, another test, another manipulation. I was exhausted, and I think that was clear in my response. I just said, "Okay, as you wish." I got up without asking questions, without dramatizing, without trying to guess what she intended with all that spectacle. I just wanted to leave. But as soon as I took 2 steps, she called me with a different tone, almost confused. "Wait, is that it? You're not going to fight for me? You're not going to try to convince me of your innocence?" I turned slowly. I was too tired. I replied, "The truth is, no. I'm tired, you know. I had a long day at work, so I'm leaving. It was good being boyfriend and girlfriend, at least in the beginning. Take care." She stood still for a moment, as if her own plans had gone out of control. She took a few quick steps toward me and stood in front of me, blocking my way. This time, she tried to sound calmer, sweeter, as if she wanted to undo everything she had just said. "No, wait, we didn't break up, love. I only said that because I feel like you're too focused on work and I wanted to know if you still love me. I expected you to ask for forgiveness or something like that." That phrase was the final blow. I wanted to know if you still love me. Another test. Another absurd idea. Almost certainly inspired by Kimberly and Julia. Another demonstration that Stefania was stuck in a logic that had nothing to do with reality. I felt like something inside me simply shut off, as if there was nothing left to explain. I stayed silent for a few seconds and then said with the most honest voice I'd used in a long time, "Honestly, Stefania, I'm tired of this situation and of you. You're emotionally immature. You don't understand that we don't distance ourselves from people because of lack of love, but because we're busy. I'm tired of these tests. I'm not a dog to be going through training trials. You know what? If you don't break up with me, then I break up. We're done this time." She cried for real. The tears came immediately. Maybe because she didn't expect me to take control of the situation. Maybe because she thought I would give in like her friends' boyfriends. Maybe because she realized too late that she had gone too far. She grabbed my arm tightly and between sobs said, Wait, I'm sorry. There won't be any more tests, I promise. Please don't break up with me." She looked at me desperately, as if she were seeing everything she took for granted, crumbling. But I no longer felt anything but tiredness. A deep, accumulated tiredness. The result of weeks of manipulation disguised as insecurity. I removed her arm gently, just enough to push her away without hurting her. I turned and simply left. As I walked toward the park exit, I heard her crying behind me. This time sincere, but I couldn't stop. It was as if a part of me had decided there was nothing more to do there, that there was nothing left to salvage. As soon as I got to my car, my phone started ringing nonstop. Calls, messages, audios, constant vibrations. Stefania was trying to talk to me in every possible way. I didn't even have the curiosity to listen or read anything. I opened the contact list, selected her name, and simply blocked her. And there, everything ended. The following hours were strange. I felt a mix of relief and emptiness, as if I had removed a huge weight from my shoulders. But at the same time, it was hard for me to process how quickly everything had happened. It didn't hurt me that the relationship ended. What hurt was having tolerated so much. It hurt having allowed the relationship to reach that point. It hurt having been with someone who thought love was demonstrated by overcoming traps. That night I slept like I hadn't in weeks. And now, with some emotional distance, I think I did the right thing. I don't believe Stefania was a bad person by essence. I'm not saying she had bad intentions from the beginning, but I do believe she was completely absorbed by immature, toxic, and absurd ideas, probably fueled by her friends' attitudes. I think she lived in a world where jealousy was proof, where accusations were tools, where breakups were psychological games to get attention. I can't live like that. I don't want to be with someone who confuses love with emotional manipulation. Since I blocked her, I haven't received direct news from her. But mutual friends said she was very shaken, that she cried and said she just wanted to know if I still loved her. I don't want to seem insensitive, but honestly I can't carry that. I can't take responsibility for how she handles things. She crosses limits because she believes that's how it should be. And no, I don't have the obligation to rehabilitate anyone or teach anyone the basics. What I find strange, and I say this with concern, is the fact that everything escalated so much in such a short time. She went from small tests to staging an entire scene in a park, accusing me of cheating without any evidence, just to see how I would react. I don't know what would have happened if I had continued tolerating that behavior. I don't even want to imagine. For now, I'm just trying to recover my tranquility, trying to remember what it's like to be in a relationship where you're not evaluated all the time. I know I made the best decision. Sometimes, leaving someone isn't an act of rejection, but an act of self-care. Final update. 2 weeks have passed since I ended my relationship with Stefania, and honestly, I thought that would be the end of everything. I believed that after our last meeting in the park, after blocking her, each of us would go on with our lives. I didn't expect any additional drama. I was wrong. What I'm about to tell now isn't something I sought out. I discovered it by accident. I was on my lunch break scrolling through TikTok like anyone else when a video appeared that at first I thought was a coincidence, but it wasn't. It was Stefania. TikTok decided to show me her video as if it were just another recommendation. When I saw her name in the first sentence she said, I literally froze. The video title was something like, "He left me for no reason. I need to vent." In the video, she seemed to have the most dramatic filter she could find. Sad music in the background, speaking directly to the camera. I'll try to describe accurately what she said, because I still haven't finished processing. Stefania, with a trembling voice, explains that her boyfriend, because that's how she refers to me, as if we hadn't officially broken up, left her without explanation, that she feels something hidden happened, that no one breaks up with someone like that just because of tiredness. She says she started doing small tests because she felt I didn't love her anymore, that I was distant, cold, and that everything indicated there was another person. She even insinuates that maybe I really was being unfaithful. The ironic thing is that she adds dramatizations telling things that never happened. For example, she claims I used to be affectionate, but suddenly stopped sending messages when, in fact, I always wrote, just not responding 5 minutes later like she wanted. She also says I came home late from work without warning, when she knows perfectly well that my schedule is variable. In the video, she seems almost crying, but just like that time in the park, there wasn't a single real tear. She talks for almost 2 minutes about how betrayed she felt, how I simply left her, and at the end, she even suggested that I broke up with her to hide that I was with someone else. When I finished watching, I didn't know whether to laugh or be worried. The first thing I thought was, is she really doing this? Then I calmed down a bit when I saw the number of views. The video hadn't blown up. It wasn't viral by far. It had something like 5,000 views, which on TikTok is quite low. It's the funniest thing. And what truly surprised me were the comments. I thought the audience would automatically support her just because she was crying in a video. But no. The majority were direct, critical, even sarcastic. They weren't offensive comments, but they were very clear in pointing out the obvious. Some of the ones I remember said, "This isn't normal. Doing tests like that sounds like manipulation. Why do you do tests? Talk to the person and that's it. He was just tired. Leave him alone. If you treated him like that, now I understand why he left. It seems more like you wanted to provoke him than that he was cheating on you. Girl, you created the problem yourself." Crying without tears. Suspicious. But what made me laugh the most was one that said, "The guy didn't cheat on you. He was just tired of your games." Reading that was so ironic and perfect that I couldn't help but let out a laugh. Not because I take pleasure in seeing someone going through a bad time, but because the whole situation was so absurd that it seemed like a joke from fate. Stefania tried to do a kind of public exposure, trying to paint me as the villain of the story. And all she achieved was that complete strangers called her possessive, manipulative, or dramatic. Several people even recommended that she do therapy or work on her insecurities. And although I don't want to sound cruel, I think they weren't wrong. It was strange to see strangers describing exactly what I had lived through for months. And even stranger was realizing that, in a way, it closed the cycle, not through humiliation, but because it served as external validation that I wasn't overreacting, that I wasn't the problem, that the relationship really was sustained by very harmful dynamics that I couldn't continue tolerating. While reading the comments, I realized that, unintentionally, this turned into a kind of poetic justice. She tried to show that I was the villain and ended up exposing exactly the attitudes that led to the end. And people noticed that without me saying a single word, I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't make a video, and I don't intend to. I'm not going to get into public discussion. I have no interest in defending myself from something that doesn't need defending. I'm not at war with anyone. I just want peace. After watching the video, I closed TikTok for a while and went for a walk. I laughed a bit, I admit, not out of mockery, but because it was all so unnecessarily dramatic that it seemed like a script scene. But soon after, I felt relief. A lot of relief. All that only confirmed that I made the best possible decision. If she reacts like this 2 weeks later, trying to turn a breakup into content, I can't imagine what it would have been like to continue with someone who sees the relationship as a constant exam and life as a competition for emotional validation. I'm calm. I feel like my life has returned to its normal rhythm. I don't receive messages. I don't receive indirects. I no longer go through absurd situations. And although I had a bit of fun with the fact that her attempt at exposure backfired, I also felt a definitive closure. I don't hold grudges, just gratitude for having gotten out in time. Dude Reddit comment. If this story teaches anything, it's that some people don't need villains. They themselves play the main role and even direct their own drama. It was just the supporting actor who decided to leave before the final credits. In the end, life goes on. His in peace, hers on TikTok.